General Hospital will reveal Brad never imagined that his trip to Miami would turn into his worst nightmare. Initially, he attended the medical conference with high hopes of rekindling his relationship with Lucas. He had spent countless nights replaying their past, regretting his mistakes, and imagining a second chance. In his mind, this conference was the perfect setting to mend what was broken, to remind Lucas of the love they once shared. But fate had other plans, and its name was Guenther. Guenther was everything Brad feared, a confident, attractive, and effortlessly charming man who captivated Lucas almost instantly. Maxie and Spinelli had orchestrated a blind date for Lucas, but Brad never expected it to have such a disastrous effect on his plans. From the moment Guenther entered the scene, Lucas's attention shifted. The subtle glances, the playful smiles, and the undeniable chemistry between them became a dagger through Brad's heart. He tried to ignore it, to pretend it didn't matter, but the breaking point came when he saw Lucas and Guenther disappear into a hotel room together. That image burned itself into his mind, fueling an anger that would soon transform into something far more dangerous than mere jealousy. Returning to Port Charles, Brad refused to be the one left behind, discarded like an afterthought. His mind raced with thoughts of revenge. He needed a way to make Lucas feel the same pain he had felt, to make him regret ever turning his back on him. That was when he remembered the whispers about Portia. There had always been suspicions about her integrity, rumors that she had once tampered with DNA test results to protect her own secrets. Digging deeper, Brad uncovered something even more damning, evidence that Portia had manipulated test results in the past and feared the consequences if the truth ever came to light. Seizing this opportunity, Brad meticulously crafted a scheme that would not only ruin Portia but also drag Lucas down with her. The timing was perfect. Lucas had recently returned to perform a critical organ transplant for Sam. But in a shocking turn of events, a series of mysterious deaths began occurring at the hospital. Patients who had no prior history of heart conditions were suddenly dying from cardiac arrest. The cause? Digitalis poisoning. Panic spread through General Hospital, and soon, the PCPD launched an investigation. What they uncovered was devastating. Thanks to the forged evidence Brad had planted, all trails led back to Portia. It appeared that she had used her position as the hospital's chief administrator to manipulate records and cover up the use of digitalis. But the most damning piece of evidence was yet to come, proof that Portia had been in direct communication with Lucas and had, in fact, been supplying digitalis to Cyrus, enabling him to eliminate those who stood in his way. The accusations sent shockwaves through Port Charles. Portia and Lucas were thrust into a media frenzy, their careers and reputations crumbling before their eyes. He feigned concern, suggesting that perhaps Lucas wasn't as committed as he appeared. Doubt crept into Guenther's mind. Was he just another fleeting distraction for Lucas? Did Lucas truly care for him, or was he simply using him to forget Brad? The more Brad manipulated the situation, the more cracks began to form in their relationship. And when the moment was right, when Lucas was at his lowest and Guenther was drowning in uncertainty, Brad made his move. Lucas had lost everything, his career, his reputation, and now, the one person who had given him a glimpse of happiness in Miami. He had no idea that every misfortune, every painful loss, had been orchestrated by the very man he had once loved. Brad had not only destroyed his life but had done so with such precision that no one would ever suspect him. In the end, as Lucas sat alone, struggling to comprehend how everything had unraveled so quickly, Brad walked away with a quiet sense of triumph. He had turned pain into power, heartbreak into vengeance, and love into something far more sinister. And in the shadows of Port Charles, he waited, because revenge was never truly complete. There was always more destruction to be had, and Brad had only just begun. Brad couldn't accept being so easily replaced. The bitterness and resentment boiling inside him ignited a dark determination. He refused to let this end quietly. Returning to Port Charles, he set his mind on revenge, plotting a course so insidious that no one would see it coming. Rumors had long swirled about Portia's past, whispers of tampered DNA results and concealed secrets that, if exposed, could ruin her career and everything she held dear. Intrigued, Brad dug deeper, uncovering far more than he had anticipated. Portia had indeed manipulated test results before, and the weight of her deception was something she feared might one day come back to haunt her. Seizing this opportunity, Brad constructed an intricate scheme designed to not only bring Portia down but also to drag Lucas into the abyss alongside her. Step by step, he ensured that the walls would close in on them, tightening the noose until they had nowhere left to run. Every move he made was calculated, every decision executed with precision, leading Portia and Lucas down a path of inevitable destruction. Their downfall had only just begun. When Lucas returned to Port Charles to perform a critical organ transplant for Sam, he believed he was stepping back into the world of medicine with a renewed sense of purpose. He was eager to prove himself, to reaffirm his role as a surgeon, and to remind everyone, especially Brad, that he had moved on with his life. But what he didn't realize was that the moment he set foot back in General Hospital, he was walking straight into a carefully orchestrated nightmare. The first few days were uneventful, filled with routine surgeries, patient consultations, and brief reunions with familiar colleagues. But then, the unexpected happened. A patient, one who had shown signs of recovery, suddenly suffered a fatal cardiac arrest. The medical staff was shaken, but at first, it seemed like a tragic but isolated incident. However, within days, more deaths followed. One by one, patients who had no previous heart conditions were collapsing, their bodies succumbing to cardiac failure under mysterious circumstances. The hospital's atmosphere shifted from one of confusion to full-blown panic. An internal review was launched, with doctors and administrators scrambling to uncover a common link between the victims. It didn't take long before toxicology reports revealed the disturbing truth: each of the deceased patients had digitalis in their system. Digitalis, a medication used to treat heart conditions, could be fatal if administered in high doses. This was no accident. Someone was deliberately poisoning patients within the hospital, and a killer was walking among them. The revelation sent shockwaves through the medical community, and soon, the PCPD became involved. Under mounting pressure, authorities scoured hospital records, questioning doctors, nurses, and administrators. And then, the first damning piece of evidence surfaced: manipulated prescription records, all tied to Portia. As the hospital's medical director, Portia had access to all pharmaceuticals, making it possible for her to authorize and distribute medication without raising suspicion. But now, she found herself at the center of the storm. According to the falsified documents that had conveniently fallen into the hands of investigators, Portia had personally signed off on the digitalis that had been administered to each victim. Even more disturbingly, further evidence pointed to the possibility that she had been covering up these deaths, ensuring that they were reported as natural causes instead of poisonings. However, the case against her didn't stop there. Another shocking layer unraveled, and investigators discovered encrypted emails exchanged between Portia and Lucas. The emails suggested that Lucas had not only been aware of the digitalis poisonings but had actively participated in a cover-up. Even worse, one particular communication hinted at something far more sinister: Lucas and Portia had been supplying digitalis to Cyrus, notorious criminal figure with a long history of eliminating his enemies through quiet, undetectable means. The implications were devastating. Had Portia, in her role as hospital director, facilitated a series of medically orchestrated murders? And had Lucas, a respected surgeon, been complicit in it all? The evidence painted a chilling picture, one of corruption, betrayal, and cold-blooded homicide. The hospital board acted swiftly. Portia was placed on immediate suspension, escorted out of the building in disgrace as whispers filled the halls. Lucas, still reeling from the shock, tried to defend himself, but the weight of the accusations was too overwhelming. The media pounced on the scandal, plastering their faces across headlines, labeling them as criminals disguised as healers. Lucas struggled to comprehend what was happening. He knew he was innocent, yet the evidence was irrefutable. It was as if someone had meticulously constructed an airtight case against him, ensuring there was no way out. And Portia, she was equally bewildered, unable to explain how every piece of evidence had aligned so perfectly to condemn her. In reality, there was only one person who knew the full truth, Brad. From the shadows, he watched as the chaos unfolded exactly as he had planned. Every falsified email, every manipulated prescription order, every damning piece of proof had been carefully orchestrated by him. He had woven the perfect web of deception, ensuring that neither Portia nor Lucas had any means of escape. His revenge was far from impulsive, it was a masterpiece of cold, calculated destruction. He had spent weeks laying the groundwork, anticipating every possible move his enemies might make. The moment Lucas had chosen Guenther over him, Brad had set this plan into motion. He wanted Lucas to suffer, not just through heartbreak but through absolute ruin. And Portia? She was merely collateral damage, an unfortunate pawn in his greater scheme. Now, as Lucas and Portia fought to salvage what little remained of their reputations, Brad was already thinking ahead. His vengeance against Lucas wasn't complete. He had taken his career, his dignity, and his trust in others, but there was still more to break. And that's where Guenther came in. Brad had no intention of stopping now. With Lucas isolated, disgraced, and desperate, he turned his attention to the man who had stolen everything from him. Guenther was next. But unlike Lucas, who had never seen the attack coming, Guenther would be brought down slowly, piece by piece. Brad wasn't just playing a game anymore, he was rewriting the rules. And by the time he was finished, Lucas wouldn't just regret ever leaving him. He would regret ever meeting him. While Portia and Lucas struggled to salvage what little remained of their reputations, Brad remained in the shadows, watching as his carefully woven plan unraveled before them. The chaos he had orchestrated played out exactly as he intended, each accusation, each loss tightening around him like a noose. And yet, his work was far from finished. A slow, satisfied smile curled on his lips as he observed Lucas crumble under the weight of scandal, knowing that his former lover had only just begun to feel the true extent of his vengeance. Brad was a patient man, and he understood that true revenge was not delivered in a single, explosive act, it was drawn out, insidious, and devastatingly personal. Now that Lucas had lost his career and credibility, the next step was even more calculated. The man Lucas had chosen over him, the one who had unknowingly set this entire downfall in motion, was about to become his next target. With cold precision, Brad maneuvered his way into Guenther's life, presenting himself not as an enemy but as an ally. He approached the other man under the guise of concern, feigning sympathy for the situation that had consumed Lucas. He played the role of the kind, understanding confidant, someone who had been burned by Lucas before and only wanted to help Guenther see the truth. At first, Guenther was hesitant, unwilling to believe anything negative about Lucas. But Brad was patient, planting small seeds of doubt with each conversation, each seemingly innocent remark. He spoke in riddles, making vague comments about Lucas's history of deception, his tendency to manipulate, his inability to fully commit to anyone. He wove a careful narrative, never outright accusing Lucas of wrongdoing but letting Guenther draw his own conclusions. And it worked. Slowly but surely, cracks began to form. Guenther, once so confident in his connection with Lucas, began to question the man he had fallen for. Was Lucas really the victim he claimed to be? Or had he played a role in his own downfall? Had he truly been faithful? Or was there more to his past than he was letting on? The doubt festered, poisoning Guenther's trust just as effectively as Brad had poisoned Lucas's future. But Brad didn't stop there. His game was far more elaborate than simple manipulation. He subtly engineered situations that would further drive a wedge between them, anonymous messages hinting at Lucas's untrustworthiness, carefully crafted coincidences that made it seem as though Lucas was hiding things. He ensured that Lucas, already drowning in his own misery, was too distracted to notice the shift in Guenther's behavior until it was too late. By the time Lucas realized what was happening, the damage had already been done. Guenther had begun to pull away, no longer looking at him with the same adoration, no longer believing in the man he thought he knew. Lucas had already lost everything, his career, his reputation, his standing in the medical community. And now, thanks to Brad's meticulous scheming, he was about to lose the last person who had stood by his side. Brad had succeeded in utterly dismantling Lucas's life, piece by piece. But more than that, he had done it with such precision that no one could trace it back to him. He had become a ghost, a phantom pulling the strings from the background, reveling in the destruction he had caused. In the end, it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about power, control, and the intoxicating realization that he had mastered the art of tearing someone apart without ever lifting a finger in direct aggression. Lucas had underestimated him. They all had. And now, in the wake of his masterpiece, Brad was left with only one question: who would be his next target?